Sorry we're late. It took me a few hours to relieve the fog of the area, but I managed to get it done. I want to thank everyone for being here. Speaker Chris Sprowls was going to be here at our normal time, but because we had to punt it with the fog and we couldn't land in the airport at the time, he's not here, but I want to thank him for all his work. We also have Sean Hamilton, our DEP Secretary, Wes Brooks, our Chief Resilience Officer, and then we have Representatives Coster and Latvala are here. I didn't see Senator Hooper. He's still probably smarting off the loss that the legislative team had yesterday in the Governor's Cup, but that's another story. I also want to thank Eric Seidel, Mayor of Oldsmar. And really just so fortunate to be to be here and everything that's going on, and it's a great place to live. Obviously in the Tampa Bay area, it'll even be better when we get back-to-back Super Bowl championships, which is coming down the pike. But we, have really worked hard across the range of issues. And one of the things we focused on in Florida is supporting infrastructure, particularly modernizing and expanding our infrastructure where need be. We're a growing state. So a lot of people that have moved here. A lot of people want to move here. Look, I'm happy with everyone we have here. I mean, but it's a free country, and so people, when they're in bad environments, when you have states that don't know how to fight crime, when you have states that are locking people down, mandating them, doing a lot of stupid things, people then look for greener pastures. And so that's just what we found. So we've worked really hard in terms of what we could do with infrastructure. And some of that is making sure we're doing things with roads and bridges. I was here with Speaker Sprowls just a couple months ago talking about what we're doing, in the Tampa Bay area. We've done stuff on Howard Franklin. We've got stuff over, when you get all the junction. There's a whole bunch of things that we're doing to help make traffic flow better, and it's really important. We're putting huge amounts of money in for that, as well as other parts of the state, and we'll continue to do that. We've also done a lot to support Florida's water resources. We've had infrastructure for that because having clean water and good waterways is important. So different reservoirs, helping our estuaries. We don't want the algae going out into the Gulf of Mexico or going into the St. Lucie on the other side of Lake Okeechobee. We want to have the Everglades replenished. So we've worked really hard on doing that. We've done more than anyone on that. But we also want to fortify infrastructure when it comes to communities throughout Florida. We're a low-lying state. We're a storm-prone state, and we're a flood-prone state. And so we work with the legislature to say, how can we address this in a way that's going to protect Florida's communities, protect our economic livelihood, and make sure that we're doing what we need to do. So we got legislated last legislative session, really a landmark piece of legislation, Senate Bill 1954, and this was Chris Sprowls led it in the House. You had Senator Simpson and others in the Senate working on it, and it laid out basically a roadmap for what we would be able to do to really help both coastal efforts but also inland efforts in terms of making Florida more resilient to a lot of the threats we face, particularly from flooding. So we were able to do that, and today we're announcing our 3-year plan for a portion of this. So we're going to be doing, and this will be reflected in my budget that we'll do soon, $270 million for over 76 projects across the state of Florida. And that is just the state's portion of it. As these things work, there's almost always a local match for that. So you're really looking at over $500 million of investments to support this type of infrastructure. And this is just part of what we're doing. This is just part of the state component. We also seeded the Resilient Florida Fund with hundreds of millions of dollars in the current year budget, and we're proposing to do hundreds of millions more in the upcoming budget. So you're going to end up seeing, probably well over $1 billion in this over the next couple years, which is going to be really, really good. And so the plan was basically developed. It was a 3-year planning horizon. the projects were submitted by local communities, and then they were ranked based on their risk of things like coastal and inland flooding throughout the different parts of the state. Projects included in the plan were submitted by counties, municipalities, regional entities, water management districts, flood control districts, but they were evaluated by the Department of Environmental Protection using the criteria that was laid out in statute. So sometimes, you know, we did the wastewater grants a month ago, and people saying, oh, you didn't give them to this area, but people didn't look to see the criteria. It had to be in a basin, a BMAP, that particular grant. These grants are going by the criteria that the legislature did in statute. And so, for example, today, we're here in Oldsmar because we have a project which is about $4.3 million here in Oldsmar. And this is something that will be very, very important for what they're doing. And they've identified vulnerabilities, and we're doing it. So we'll put in some money, they'll put in some money, and you'll have over $4 million projects. And so all the projects included in this plan will enhance efforts to protect our communities, coastlines, and shores, and that's very, very important. We also have with us, we have Wes Brooks here. He's been, involved with helping us in this area with federal-state relations now, is leading the effort in resiliency. And, of course, we had Julia Neshwat prior to that. But we called for the creation of the grant program within DEP, and we're happy that we're able to deliver. This is really going to make a difference, and I think that we're going to be, probably in much better shape as a result very, very soon. So this is just one part. There's going to be a whole host of other projects that are also going to be announced in the very near future for actually more money than we're doing now. But this is $276 million, which is just the state's portion. When you match the local matches, you're over $500 million over the next few years for just one part. And then you're going to have many hundreds of millions more, which we'll be announcing very soon. So we're happy to be here. We wish the speaker could be here, but in his absence, we're going to have one of his colleagues, Chris Latvala, come up and say a few things from the legislative perspective.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis, and you're not only Florida's governor, you're America's governor, and it's an honor. And it's an honor to have you back home in Pinellas County. And thank you, Secretary Hamilton, as well, for being here. I know Speaker Chris Sprowls wanted to be here today and talk about one of his key priorities from this last session, the Always Ready agenda, and address the impacts of flooding and sea level rise. Unfortunately, because of the time change of today's event, he is not able to be here. Before the last legislative session began, the Speaker saw the need for the state to prioritize the impacts of flooding and sea level rise for Florida's residents, homeowners, and businesses. He developed the most robust legislation in the nation to address the devastating impacts these water issues can have on properties and lives. As a low-lying state that is surrounded by water on three sides, Florida is extremely vulnerable to the risks of flooding. But for too long, our state has been reactive in our response. With the Always Ready legislation signed into law and the plan delivered today, Florida is, for the first time ever, strategic and proactive. When Speaker Chris Sprowls came up with this idea, he wanted to model the approach on our state's transportation planning process. His forward-thinking leadership on addressing the effects of flooding has resulted in a model for the nation to follow. The legislation outlined a strategic process of prioritizing and funding local projects that takes into account a statewide strategy. I want to thank the governor and his office for their work in producing the first comprehensive plan to address the effects of flooding and sea level rise in the state of Florida. With this preliminary resilience plan, we take a key step in protecting our communities far into the future. On behalf of Speaker Chris Sprowls, thank you very much.
Okay. You know, one of the things is when you start dealing with, you prepare for hurricanes, and and we go through a bunch of exercises. We've looked at what would happen if we had a big one in the Tampa Bay area. It would not be pretty in terms of the potential vulnerabilities. And one of the things that you learn is like, the big winds. It's obviously can be a big deal. We saw with Hurricane Michael, just like a buzzsaw going through. But you have buildings that are newer, a lot of them withstood that, even the Category 5. But when you just get a lot of water coming in, I mean, that's like the worst for damage, and it kind of paralyzes everything. So the more that you can mitigate that, really you can reduce the impacts that we see when we do have these tropical events. And that is always going to be something that's going to be a part of life here in the state of Florida. Knock on wood, we had a relatively modest impacts in the state of Florida in the last couple years, but we know going forward that could be something that could change very quickly. All right, Sean Hamilton is our Secretary of Environmental Protection.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor stated, I have the pleasure and the honor of serving as the Secretary of the Department of Environmental Protection. Obviously, it is a pleasure to be here today. Beautiful weather now, beautiful skies, but more importantly, one of the most historic announcements, well, I say one of the most, but a very important historic announcement is we take a monumental step to prepare our state for the effects of sea level rise. But first, I mean, it goes without saying, right, our environment and our economic success are tied tightly together. And I think we all acknowledge that, and that's not up for debate. And so the governor, with his leadership, along with the legislature, recognized that resilience for our communities and our inland communities as well is at the forefront of environmental issues we face here at the state. Since he took office, the governor's made that clear. He's made that a priority, creating the various offices that you've heard about. But more importantly, he's championed the support for the funding, along with our partners in the legislature, to make sure our local communities are prepared to deal with the impacts of sea level rise, intensified storm, and flooding. Again, leadership will always be one of the most important ingredients as we move forward. So as you think about storm surge, as you think about flooding, erosion, saltwater intrusion, as you think about something basic as stormwater management, all of those things will be, as the governor stated, exacerbated by sea level rise. So to be ready for those changes that will occur, we must continue to plan. We must be prepared for the possibility of those impacts. And to tackle this critical issue, as the governor stated, back in May of 2021, he signed Senate Bill 1954 and House Bill 7019. This comprehensive legislation ensures a coordinated approach to Florida's coastal and inland resilience. And I can't stress the importance of a coordinated approach in a state that is ground zero, right, for the impacts of sea level rise. This targeted funding and directives establish a structure for resilience that follows the best available science and data while enhancing efforts to protect inland and coastal resources that act as natural defenses against sea level rise. Today, DEP submitted the state's first ever statewide flooding and sea level rise resiliency plan to the state legislature. And I'm proud to be here on behalf of the many talented folks at the department who worked tirelessly to pull that list together. And again, it is an honor to represent them here today. This plan will enhance our efforts to protect our inland waterways, coastlines, shores, and coral reefs, which will serve as invaluable natural defenses against sea level rise. In addition to the 3 projects right here in Pinellas County, which includes infrastructure enhancements to the water facility here in Oldsmar, there are more than 70 other projects on the list that would benefit and protect communities and make them more resilient. I'll give you an example, there's a project in Fort Lauderdale for the construction of a new pump station that will drain water into the C-14 canal to prevent flooding. There's a storage project in Putnam County that will collect and retain stormwater by building a pump station, outfall structure, a 4-mile levee, and improving existing levees. The city of Apalachicola, a place that I know also well, a project that will move critical wastewater facilities out of the flood zone and into an existing plant site in order to reduce flooding, but also harden that to withstand hurricane winds. This is a pivotal moment in Florida's history as we prepare and make sure we're poised to protect our resources for sea level rise. I'm happy to be here today with the governor, our elected partners, and the many stakeholders as we continue to work and make sure that we're doing everything we can to bolster the resilience efforts of our state. Thank you.
And we're, fortunate. We've had a bunch of folks that have been helping out We've done a lot, as many of you know, on doing things like combating blue-green algae and red tide. We've got the Center for Red Tide Research. We've done a lot in moat marine. We've done innovative tech. We have our second chief science officer, but we've had chief science officers guiding the way on that, also helping with this. But we also have the chief resiliency officer of Florida, who's helping to look at all these different projects and make sure that we're getting maximum value for what we're doing. So Dr. Wes Brooks is here. He's going to say a couple words.
I just want to say, first of all, what Secretary Hamilton said is absolutely correct. Historic is what we're talking about here today, historic event. The governor is making history. Our governor is making history, and he's doing so with an eye to the future prosperity of places like Oldsmar. I want to thank Governor DeSantis for having me here today and for allowing me the opportunity to serve as Florida's Chief Resilience Officer. Florida is fortunate to have a governor who not only recognizes the importance of protecting our communities across the state from the impacts of sea level rise and damaging storm and flooding events, but one who's taken tangible steps to address these impacts. Governor DeSantis has already committed unprecedented investments to promote a more resilient Florida. And now the projects included in this statewide flooding and sea level rise resilience plan provide concrete opportunities to begin building a brighter future for all of our inland and coastal communities. I look forward to continuing to enhance our coordination across state, regional, and local entities to further the governor's bold vision to ensure that Florida leads on resilience. Thank you, Governor.
Okay. So we're excited about this. I know that the legislature is excited as well. We set the table in this last session. We're going to be able to get the funding. We do have dedicated funding, as I think many of you know, that can go to these. We have dedicated funding for wastewater and septic to sewer type things as well now, and that's in addition to what we seeded in the Resilient Florida Grant Program. So we're really happy about that. We're also happy about a lot of the news that we're seeing in different parts of the state where people's jobs are being saved because of what we did to protect them against mandates. And that has been the case with nurses, with police officers, with people that work for large companies. And not only have we been able to save thousands of jobs, we actually have some people who are now being hired back due to what we did. And so I said we needed to make sure that people were able to keep their jobs and earn a living and shouldn't be denied that right based on a COVID jab. And we've done that, and we're really happy that we were really leading the effort. And we're really one of only a couple states that have tackled this. A lot of others have said, you know, they'll blame Biden, and yes, he's doing a lot of bad things, and those have been put on hold. The CMS is on hold, the OSHA's on hold, the contractor mandate's on hold in some states. We're going to get a hearing and a ruling very soon in Florida, and we think it'll be on hold here too. But there's also other places trying to do mandates apart from that, and in Florida, you know, we protected people against that. I think that that's something that's going to be very, very good going forward, and it's you know, respecting people's ability to make their own decisions. So we're really happy to see not only that, you know, we said we would do something, we did it, but then to see the results. And we can say, you know, had we not done what we done, there'd be people right now who would be getting pink slips, and that's not happening in the state of Florida. So good on everybody who supported us. Also want to recognize across the bay today, the First Lady is doing an event at Moffitt Cancer Center to announce that we're increasing funding for a number of cancer research institutions and hospitals in the state of Florida in my budget coming up. And so she has our Surgeon General, Joe Ladapo, with her, as well as other people from Moffitt. But this also will be Sylvester down in South Florida. It's not just Moffitt. So we thank her for her taking the lead on that and really serving, I think, as an inspiration to a lot of people who are having to go through tough times like she's had to go through. That's right. The best in all 50 states. We also are excited, so this is going to be part of our budget. We also talked about what we were doing for education, how we're going to be doing things to boost teacher pay, how we're going to be doing things to support infrastructure, how we're going to be doing things to support the men and women of law enforcement, how we're going to be doing things to support our veterans and our National Guard, and give people the ability to serve. If the federal government pushes them out for a mandate, they'll still be able to serve in a state guard. So we're really happy that we've been able to do a lot in this budget. And again, we're going to do the whole budget coming out very soon. But I think you're going to see we're probably going to have higher budget reserves than we've ever had in the history of the state of Florida in this coming year's budget. And so that shows you that we have the lowest per capita tax burden in the United States. We are doing things that matter, that are helping Floridians across the board, and we're being very aggressive on that. But yet at the same time, our budget will come in at less than half of the budget of the state of New York, which is the closest state to us in population. We're about 3 million more people than they are. And not only are we less than half of that, but we're going to have, really, really healthy budget reserves, which is just something that we should all be proud of. And the policies matter. If you look at what's going on in some of these jurisdictions, it's their bad policies that are causing crime to spike. It's their bad policies that are causing people to leave or businesses to relocate. Now they say they're going to do mandates on private workers in like New York City. So these are all going to have consequences. And so having good policy is very, very important. And I can tell you, anytime you see something going on in places like San Francisco or these other places, you could be sure Florida is going to be doing the opposite of what they're doing. We're going to keep people safe, and we're going to keep the state going forward. Okay, with that, I could take a question or two. Well, what I've found is people, when they start talking about things like global warming, they typically use that as a pretext to do a bunch of left-wing things that they would want to do anyways. And so we're not doing any left-wing stuff. What we're doing, though, is just reacting to the fact that, okay, we're a flood-prone state. We do have storms. I don't know that we really haven't had more storms in the last 10, 15 years than we had in other portions of, you could pick different periods where we've had a lot. But the bottom line is this is something that has a huge impact. As our state becomes more populated, of course, there's more property that can be damaged. There's more human lives that would be at stake. So rather than just simply reacting every time something like that happens, let's be more proactive and let's build strong infrastructure going forward. And so I think that's just the right thing to do regardless. But be very careful of people trying to smuggle in their ideology. They say they support our coastline, or they say they support, some, different our water environment, and maybe they do, but they're also trying to do a lot of other things. And if you look at the price of gas now, just imagine if they had their way, gas would be $6 or $7 a gallon. And we need to make sure people are able to have affordable energy. And we're also, we just did, what'll be in the budget too, we want to do a state gas tax holiday for folks. It'll be $1 billion in savings, and we need to do that. They did all these barrels out of the strategic reserve, which you're not supposed to do just for normal price fluctuations, but they did it. And I think it had the effect of reducing the price of gas by like 2 cents. And it's just going to probably go back up throughout the rest of this. So the root problem of the high gas prices is anti-energy policies. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing. You go back a year ago, instead of gas being $3.40, gas was like, $2.10. $2.15, and that makes a big difference for a lot of Florida families. So we're going to do what we can to relieve the burden of the gas prices. Of course, there's a lot of other inflation throughout the economy. They told us that wouldn't happen, that it was just transitory, but in reality, it's real, and it's likely to persist for quite some time unless we see a change of course out of Washington.
Governor DeSantis, this is Brittany Muller with News Channel 8. We're hearing that the new variant, the Omicron variant, could be here in the Tampa Bay area, which would be the first case. Can you confirm that the Omicron variant?
So the health is going to have something, but they believe that they have identified, I'm not sure where it is, but I said this last week, once you identify it a few places around the world, it is spread, okay? So you're going to see it, and just because you haven't identified it somewhere does not mean it's not there. But the question is, when Omicron, you started to see stuff in the press about it, and people were trying to whip things up, you saw the markets drop. And the question was why did the markets drop? And it wasn't because the markets were fearful of Omicron. It was because the markets were fearful that governments would do destructive things in response to Omicron. And in Florida, we won't let them lock you down. We won't let them restrict you. We're not going to let them impose mandates. We're not going to let them close the schools. We are going to protect your freedom to make your decisions. And I have no problem if somebody if they're scared of Omicron and they want to lock down or they want to isolate. That is absolutely their decision in a free society. But you don't impose Fauciism on the whole country or on the whole state. It's wrong. And I would note, we showed this summer when we had to deal with the Delta, we sent treatment for people. We sent up 25 treatment sites for monoclonal antibodies. And guess what? In the last 2 months, we have the lowest or one of the lowest COVID rates in the entire country in Florida. We have one of the lowest hospitalization census. We have one of the last I looked, we had the lowest percentage in ICU of anywhere, and you see it surging in other parts. And so it's not something, when you have there's going to be variants. That's just the reality. And Fauci finally admitted this, but COVID does not just disappear. So you can say lock down, but until when? It doesn't, not like you lock down and it'll just go away. So this is something that you have to deal with, and I think we've provided, good options for people if this is something that they have to do by doing these treatments. Now, we'll see how it works if you have new variants, but all indications are all the stuff that's been proven has still been effective. But that really, I think, should be the way to go. It should not be, to impose restrictions, certainly to shut schools or any of that stuff. How happy have our kids been not to have to be forced to wear masks all day in school? I mean, and I saw a headline like Massachusetts school district surprised that not mandating masks has not contributed to a rise in case. All you had to do was open your eyes to know that it has a seasonal pattern. When it goes down, you can have masks or no masks, and it's gone down everywhere in Florida, over the last 2 or 3 months, and that's just the reality. But it's wrong to make the kids suffer, under these masks. And really, we believe in parents' rights and parents' Bill of Rights, and it should be the parents that are ultimately making this decision about what they're supposed to their kid. And I have no problem. If a parent wants that, then that's fine. I disagree with that, but at the same time, if that's a concern they have, I think there's other ways you could address that rather than putting a piece of cloth, but that's fine. But you should not mandate other parents to do it if that's not what they think that their kids want to do. And I think also one of the things that I've seen, and this is not a government mandate that's happening, but what I see is you'll see entertainment venues, hotels, there'll be big events. You'll have like a charity event, and there'll be 500 people eating, drinking, having a good time, which I support 100%. No masks or anything, great. But they make the staff all wear masks. And I'm just thinking to myself, hold on, you're in a packed ballroom with 500 people, and they're not wearing masks. And first of all, they shouldn't be, that's fine. But is it really going to make a difference to have 15 waiters wearing masks? And I think it's like a two-tiered society. They're trying to have a servant class that has to always do all this, but yet the other class, they can lecture you about wearing masks, but then they don't wear masks themselves. That's wrong. That's wrong, and I really think, again, there's no requirements in Florida that any of these workers wear this. This is all being done in the private business. And I think the reason why private business does it is because, yes, the employees will be happier. Yes, is it going to make a material difference on any type of COVID? No, either way. But they know that if they have the servers without it, they may get that one customer who's so upset and will complain, and they don't want to deal with that. But I think it's time we stop letting that one person veto what's right. And so I would say for all these different, in Florida, we've never arguably done better in hospitality than we've been doing lately, because people know they come to Florida to vacation, they're going to be able to be treated with respect and free people. They're not going to have to show medical papers to get a beer. They're not going to have to do that to go get lunch. So we have a good thing going, but I would just say for folks in those industries, let your employees, let these folks breathe, let them make their own decisions on this, because I think it's terribly uncomfortable that they're in this for so many hours a day. And I don't think it's been proven to make a difference, but I certainly think that if you have 500 people in a ballroom, to force a handful of the service staff to have to do that, that's not based in science. That's just more for show. So I hope that we'll be able to have choice there, very soon. Again, this isn't government that said anything about it. I thought kind of you'd see it roll off, and I think the more the Florida-based smaller businesses have done that. Some of the bigger businesses that are headquartered out of state, they've kept some of these policies. But I feel bad for the employees, and I think it's wrong that somehow, to look down on somebody or to act like they should have to abide by different rules than me or you or anybody else. And so hopefully we can all move forward where everybody has the ability to exercise those free choices. So thank you, guys. We appreciate it. We'll see you.